Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Hangouts. I'm Heidi Saravola. I blog over at startsit8.com. I'm going to be your host tonight. It's my first time, so bear with me. We're happy to have everybody here tonight for our Hangout. Um, we're so happy to have you with us, whether you are watching live on the G Plus event page or watching live via the YouTube video that we have. You can also watch it later or listen via Stitcher or iTunes podcast. As you know, we've switched the time of our Hangouts. You can find us now at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday nights. And of course, if you can't make it live, you can always leave us questions and comments either before, during, or after the Hangout. And you can certainly then watch us later via our video or Stitcher or listen to us in our iTunes podcast. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at ihomeschoolnetwork.com/newsletter to stay informed of our upcoming Hangout topics. So those of you that are watching live, welcome. Welcome to this lovely Thursday night. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them on the G Plus page, and our lovely manager, Marlene Griffith, will be checking those out and trying to bring those up as we go out throughout the evening. Marlene, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here with you this Thursday. My name is Marlene Griffith, as Heidi said. You can find me blogging over at adiligent.heart.com. I blog about faith, family, marriage, kids, a little bit of everything here and there. So please leave your comments in the event room, as Heidi said, and I will bring them in for our panelists to tackle them as they can.
All right, well, thank you, Marlene. And now we're going to shift to our special guest this evening, who is Cindy West, and the topic is Living Math for Homeschool tonight. Cindy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about our topic tonight.
Alrighty, hey everybody, I am Cindy West. I have 3 kiddos. We live in Kentucky and we have been doing Living Math for many, many years. I hope tonight that we're going to just be able to touch on what exactly Living Math is and how to start accomplishing some of it in your homeschool. Please feel free to ask questions. If we don't get to them tonight within the video, we will be happy to answer them on Google Plus comments later.
Absolutely. And we have a full panel of guests tonight that I'm looking forward to introducing. And we're going to start on what appears to be my left that I see with Alicia, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hey guys, I'm Alicia Hutchinson. I blog at Investing Love, and it's aliciahutchinson.com. And I have 4 kids. We've been homeschooling for about 7 years, 4 kids, 7 years, whatever. And I am pretty new to Living Math, but I'm really excited to talk about it tonight. Cindy West has been somebody that I've looked up to in homeschooling for a really long time, so I'm excited to chat with you guys tonight.
Thanks, Alicia. And next we have Brenda.
Hey guys, I'm Brenda from Schooling a Monkey. I have 2 little girls, one in 3rd grade and one who's just about 2. So we've actually used Living Math for quite some time, but I didn't realize that there was like an official term for it. So we've kind of been doing our own thing and not realizing that so many other people did. So I'm really excited about learning how everybody else uses the same sort of ideas and new ideas for how to get it a little more interesting maybe, so I'm excited about that, but I'm really happy to be here. This is my first hangout as a panelist, so I'm pretty excited.
Thanks for joining us, Brenda. And last but certainly not least, we have Sade.
Hi, I'm Sade Tagbo. I blog sometimes these days at shadetagbo.com, and I have been I've been homeschooling for 7 years now, going on 8, and we have 7 children, a mix of biological, adopted, and foster kids. And this is our first school year with me homeschooling everybody. So I have 6 children who are officially in school this year.
Wow, awesome. All right, we're going to get started. So we don't want to miss out on any of this important information we got going on. And we're going to start with Cindy, and we would love to hear from you. What is living math?
Okay, well, my definition could possibly be different than other people's, but I will tell you what living math means to us. I am a Charlotte Mason homeschooler. However, I feel like living math is a really good technique to use with all homeschoolers. Essentially, when you're talking living math, you're talking about math that's real. You're talking about math that you make sure makes sense to your children, whether that's through the use of manipulatives or pictures or tying it to something real in their life. Um, there's so many things that can tie into living math. Um, Another side of it for me is that we still use textbooks and we still love textbooks, but I feel like textbooks leave out a lot. So the things that I add in are kind of also what I categorize into living math, and I know we're going to get a chance to talk about each of those things. If any of the other ladies have a different definition of living math, I would certainly love to hear it.
So would anybody else want to chime in on their definition or what living math means to them? Oh, everybody's going to be quiet tonight, huh? All right. Well, Cindy has a book called Loving Living Math that's written for parents to help them understand why living math is important, but more specifically, how to implement that. Because I know if it's me, I'm thinking, well, exactly how am I going to do this math without my lovely, textbook? What is living math? So this book is there to help you with that. It explains 10 important mathematical concepts and methods that most textbooks completely leave out. Best of all, adding living math to your homeschool schedule isn't hard, and Cindy's going to encourage us all on that it is not a difficult thing to do, and nor do you have to leave your textbook, which makes me feel a little better because I kind of like my textbooks. Sorry. So you can find Loving Living Math at shiningdawnbooks.com, and that's a site that Cindy has. So if you're interested, Loving Living Math is at shiningdawnbooks.com, and I think Marlene's going to be dropping something in there to the event room for so everybody can take a look at it and have an easy link to it. So now that we have established what living math is, how do we incorporate it into our homeschool? Let's start with somebody else, and then we'll get back to Cindy and let her tell us how she does it. Maybe Alicia, how do you incorporate living math into your homeschool?
Well, I started reading Cindy's book this summer, and I have always been intrigued by the subject of living math, but I've never really understood or been brave enough, I guess, to really do it. So this year I was like, we're going to do it because I have two boys and then I have girls, and my oldest son just does not like math. And the way Cindy explained it, it was really inspiring to try to do something different to really get him to like math, even though it might not ever be his favorite subject. I really thought I personal challenge this. So find some ways to make math more fun for him. So so I read Cindy's book, and it was really inspiring. And what we have been doing this year is we use our textbook as a guide, and every other day we do a lesson out of our textbook, and then we do the next day math lesson that kind of goes along with the lesson we have just done. So a couple weeks ago, my old did a lesson on finding the area of triangles, and I actually emailed Cindy to see if she had any fun ideas, and she emailed me a bunch of ideas. And then the next day we found the area of the Bermuda Triangle, so he had to use a map, had to find the scale, how many inches equaled the miles, and then he had to figure out all the different miles for each side of the triangle, and then he had to go off of that and find the area of the Bermuda Triangle, and it just made it alive, which sounds kind of weird, but it really does. So that's one thing that we've done so far this year, and I think that it really has worked to make it more fun for them. So we're enjoying it so far.
That's awesome. Oh, the Bermuda Triangle. How cool. I think what's part of what makes it more fun with the living math is because you can apply it to things in real life. It's not just kind of you're reading something in a textbook and it doesn't necessarily apply to anything that you're relating to in your own life. So I think that's a great point to make about why living math. Um, how about you, Sade? How do you and why living math for your homeschool? Is she frozen? I think we might have lost Sade. All right. How about Cindy?
Um, Living math, it's done for
Oh,
us has been.
all right. It looks like Sade, we're having a really hard time getting you in here. So we're going to pause on you and let Cindy tell us, why and how, do we incorporate living math into our homeschool.
Okay, I will kind of go off of what Alicia said. The reason we started um, was because I saw a son early on who hated math. And I know math is very exciting. Um, he still is not convinced that it's exciting. He's in ninth grade now, so he's not convinced it's exciting, but we made it more doable. We made it more fun. Um, so that's how we began. That's the reason why. It cut back on the complaints because we typically do the textbook about 3 days a week, and then we do living math a couple of days a week. And so it was kind of this treat. You get these 3 days done, and the other 2 days we're going to do the stuff you really like. So it was sort of a bribery tool. And then I started seeing, oh my goodness, they are getting so much from this, not only in understanding, but outside of what the textbook is asking them to do. And so some of the things that we do for living math, I love how Alicia said she takes a textbook lesson and then she ties a living math into it. I actually do the textbook almost separately. And then if we're having problems, I might do it as Alicia said and do something living to kind of help with that. But more so, we just leave the textbook behind and do other things those couple of days. And one of those that has been super awesome is logic. And some people go, well, logic's a science. Yes, logic is a science, but logic is also something that is super connected to mathematics, and it's going to build a brain that kind of gets math more. So logic has been very cool to incorporate. I know that, Marlene, I've got a logic link somewhere. I think I might have even put it in the comments already if you guys want to find that. That just shows you some of my very favorite logic resources. Other things we do are a lot of real life. Um, you hear people all the time talk about, well, I'm going to go to the grocery and we're going to count that as math. Well, okay, yes, you can count that as math. However, let's make sure you're not just going for a grocery trip and nothing's happening other than everybody shopping for groceries and then you count it as math. When I take a grocery trip and turn it into math, I may actually be asking my children, especially my 7-year-old at this point, go find unit prices. Mom needs to know which box of cereal is the better buy. So, and even if we have a calculator, he's not quite good at it yet. Well, let's put it into the calculator and let's figure this out. So that is living math. It touches on so many different things. I don't want to take up too much time myself talking. What I would like to do is hear everybody else talk and then maybe answer some specific questions about exactly what to include, because I could literally talk all night about ideas. Sound good?
Sounds fabulous, Cindy. I think we have not heard from Brenda yet, so I would love to hear what Brenda has to say. I think she has kids a little bit on the younger side, and how she's been incorporating it into her homeschool.
Well, I do have younger kids. My oldest is in third grade, and we've been doing a lot of like what Cindy was saying about, because she's really learning about money right now. So, but instead of like just going to the grocery store and having her like pick out stuff or whatever, one of the things that we like to do is like have our own store at home. So she'll like set up different prices for things. And I remember growing up, that was one of our favorite things to do too, is to set up our stores. And then once we get more into it, she's at the basics of money right now. She's just now realizing how to count it up or whatever. But in the future, we'll get her to like do like the which one is more expensive, or maybe do like what if the tax is 3%, or what if the tax is 7%, or whatever, or if you're in Texas like I am, 8.25%. But so that's one of the things we do with her. And another thing that she likes to do is sort of start like the very basics of geometry. So we have this one book that's a critical thinking book that has a lot of like geometry concepts, which is where I was weakest growing up, I think, perhaps because I didn't do a whole lot of living math myself growing up. But tying it into like the logic, the critical thinking and basics of geometry sort of helps you like logic out like exactly why the principles work, which I feel like a lot I never got just from doing a textbook perspective. And then we often use it just as like filler when we're doing other things. Like driving around, I'll try to pick out something for some sort of problem for her to work on, whether it's like figuring out how long the time is of the light, or just anything I can think of to just kind of keep their brains active in the car a little bit. So that's one thing that we like to do. And then she's learning a lot about fractions, so we do tons of cooking stuff right now. That's probably her favorite because she loves the creative side, and she loves that math can also be creative. And then with my 2-year-old, all we're doing right now is learning to count, working with those tiny little manipulative things that are so fun for the kids to do when they're toddlers. So, but that's pretty much how we incorporate it, other than trying to mix it up a little bit when we do our basic math lessons. We do a mix of like I think it was Alicia said, of where we have the lesson as like the jumping off point, and then try to incorporate a more living example along with it, especially when the concepts are difficult for them to comprehend just from the lesson.
That's great. I actually my kids always enjoyed the cooking the most. They always thought that was the best because, who doesn't? I don't know. I guess I don't love to cook, but my children love to. So they always thought that was a great way to learn things. And actually, every year when we take road trips, we often travel to Florida for vacation, and we'll all get all our notepads and start. The kids will be like, "How long till we get there? How long till we get there?" And we'll be okay. Well, let's look at where we are and where we're going to go. How many miles do we have left? How fast are we going? Those kinds of things, rather than me listening to them complain to me about how long it's going to be. I try and occupy their minds by letting them figure out how long it's going to be before we actually get there, figuring in stops along the way and such. My teenager always groans at that, but the younger ones always think it's fun. So, I know we've been talking a little bit about textbooks, and I have a thing for textbooks, so I have much more trouble kind of stemming away from that, and I would love to hear some of Cindy's ideas, about not using the textbook all the time, and other ways to use living math and incorporate it in, because I certainly struggle with that myself.
Okay. That's the number one question I hear when I do this living math talk is, what about the textbook? Because if you tell me to do 3 days, for instance, of textbook work a week, then obviously I am not finishing the textbook by the end of the year. So do I go ahead and school through the summer and finish the textbook? Do we stop where we drop off and then next school year pick back up again? And here's what I have to say about textbooks. I was also a public school teacher. Never once, and you don't have to have been a teacher to know this, because most of you probably were in public school, and so I have a question. Did anybody ever finish a textbook in school? Ever? No. That answer is no. So the purpose for textbooks is to have all this great stuff, and if you have kids who can just fly through it, they fly through it, and there's plenty for them to do so. But every single year you go into the new textbook, the new grade level, and they spend approximately 2 to 3 months reviewing last year's academics. Rarely are they even introducing anything new, much less getting to the things that were at the very back of that textbook. I just want to encourage you that I personally have never finished a textbook with any of my children. I have a senior I have a ninth grader, and I now have a second grader that we're kind of starting all over with. The senior just did super well on her ACT. Um, in every single, we use Saxon for the most part as our textbook, Horizons early on. But every single year for Saxon, we would test to make sure that they were ready for the following year. So the end of the year, we would give a placement test. And not one time, even with a child who's not necessarily the best at math, not one time have my kids ever not tested into the next level. And even better, sometimes they tested into an additional level. So I just really want to encourage you not to fret at all about a textbook. If it does fret you just a little bit, why don't you see if you can give a chapter test, and if they're pretty good at that chapter, skip it. And that way you're maybe not quite so behind in what you think would be behind. Or lessons, if you find a lesson in a textbook is really repeating, skip the extra repeating lessons, and you don't have to worry so much about being left behind.
No, you're right. And your point about the textbooks repeating the begin so much in the beginning, it wasn't until my daughter's a sophomore this year, and I don't think it was until last year that she suddenly realized and went, Mom, when are we going to stop reviewing? We started the new year, and she's like, we were 3, 4, 5 weeks in, and she's like, we did all this last year, and it was the first time that the light bulb went off to her, and she was like, this stinks. Why are we, like we've been there, done that kind of thing. And so you're right, there is so much repeat and overlap with the textbook that I could skip. I could have said, oh, just skip those. Oh, I have such a hard time with that though. So you're right that you can very much, then I should have skipped those and said, you know what, let's just move on and, do something else. And it probably would have made her happy because mine doesn't love math so much herself either. So I forgot to mention earlier that your book, Loving Living Math, is actually $6 until looks like the 31st of October with the code LOVEMATH. And I'm not looking at the event room, but I'm assuming Marlene had also put that in there because she's on top of things like that. But I wanted to mention it now, make sure that everybody knew that it is only $6 right now through the rest of the month. So if you want to check it out and be able to have in your hands some of Cindy's wonderful knowledge and information when it comes to living math, you can do so. Let's see, where are we at? Oh, Cindy, now you got to tell us, where on earth can we get these ideas for living math? Because if I sat here and thought, oh, living math, what am I going to do? I would need some help. Like, where am I going to find it? And I know Brenda gave us a few talking about cooking and with fractions and things like that. So, and we heard a great one about the Bermuda Triangle from Alicia and figuring out the area of the Bermuda Triangle. So where do we get these fabulous ideas to engage our children in this living math?
I need help too. Sometimes it just happens to work out where I go, oh, we could do this, and it would totally work out. But a lot of times I have resources. So as Alicia well knows, because I pin lots and lots of living math stuff, and I actually sent her to Pinterest with those links about the things that she was doing with her son. So Pinterest is huge. Type in living math. I actually have a living math board. Marlene is going to probably put in the comment section. I have a living math page on my website that kind of tells you all the different how-tos and resources. The book obviously is going to tell you every little bitty thing that we personally do. My biggest suggestion is not to get overwhelmed with it, but potentially think, okay, I need to maybe incorporate logic. So purchase a logic book or two. Don't overwhelm yourself with a bazillion things right now. And again, if you'll click on a couple of those links that Marlene is putting in, you'll see the logic books that I recommend. If your child is struggling with the area of a triangle, like Alicia's son was, get on Google and type hands-on lesson for area of a triangle, or help my son understand area of a triangle, and you're going to get YouTube videos, you're going to get lesson ideas. One thing that's huge about living math, from my perspective, is that you take something that's really abstract, and they're touching it, they're feeling it, they're manipulating it, and they're making these concrete pictures in their mind. So they're building a concrete understanding of something that is abstract. So like in Alicia's example of the real life Bermuda Triangle, that made sense and it had a purpose. It wasn't just some weird triangle that he had to figure out the area for. There was an actual, oh, there's a picture in my mind, and well, this would have an area because ships would sail in it. And so he's building concrete understanding. And that's really your goal with Living Math.
I muted myself. Sorry, ladies. um, I love that, and I am a Google nut. I love to Google things, and now I'm going to have to go and double check your Living Math Pinterest board now for fun ideas, because I don't do enough of that, I don't think, in our house sometimes. Like I said, we cook, even though I don't love it. We do our travel stuff, and my teenager, believe it or not, doesn't love math, but is fantastic with money. We volunteer for a youth organization here, and she works in the concession stand, and all the adults just love her because they don't have to try and make change because she's fabulous at it. And so for her, it's, makes her feel good because it's something she's really good at, and so she can work with numbers when it comes to money like there's no tomorrow. I don't know if it's that like teenage incentive or what, but but she absolutely loves doing that kind of stuff. Let's see, where am I at? I see Shining Dawn Books. You also have Nature Explorer series on more than 20 topics to make science come alive as well. So not just math, but science too. You're into everything, Cindy. Math, I guess math and science kind of go together, right? I lost my train of thought, sorry. I would love to hear from Alicia a little bit more about what she's doing, because obviously she has taken your lead, Cindy, and has found some of these great resources and is using them herself. And I would love to hear, her thoughts on how now I believe she said that she's doing the textbook and the Living Math together, which is obviously one way to do it. And Cindy, you said you kind of do them separately, almost like you do your textbook and then you kind of go to your Living Math. So maybe Alicia can tell us a little bit more about what she's doing.
You mean what we do on like a weekly basis? You kind of broke up a little bit.
Sorry about that. Yes. Like how does it look in your home, on your, as someone's looking to do Living Math, how does it play out for you in your home on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis?
Well, first of all, the kids have really, and maybe they think that they're just getting out of math. So when I say we're going to do Living Math today, they're really excited because I think maybe they think that they're not even doing math, but they really are. So like I said, I kind of, I don't know, the way my brain works, I like the idea of, kind of coming up with something, either with, a quick Google search or a search on Pinterest or something, to kind of find something that goes along with what their lesson was. And like Cindy was saying before, the idea, and you, Heidi, like the idea of skipping, the last third of your textbook, kind of like, it kind of gives me hives a little bit too. But I really, the last part of the textbook or the beginning part of the textbook, I should say, is just review. And so this year I really had to wrap my brain around that, and so we skipped ahead several lessons because I thought, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're going to get to the good stuff where we're really learning, and we don't need to review. I mean, we use Saxon as well, and Saxon is really good about kind of reviewing within the lesson anyway. So they get enough review. So yeah, so we just do about 2 lessons from the textbook and then about 2 lessons of Living Math. Our library has a great math section of books, and so right now my first grader is learning how to double numbers, so like 1 + 1, 2 + 2, 3 + 3, like that. And then I actually found a book at the library where it was don't know, it was about monkeys or something, and they were doubling everything they had, and by the end of the book, they ended up with like 100 gumballs or whatever it was. And so on every page, I would cover up the answers, and so then, we'd read the book, and she'd have to tell me, how many do they have now, or whatever the thing was. And so we're just really reading a book, and she's practicing her math facts, but it's a lot less tedious than just flipping through flashcards. And for my boys especially, I don't know what it is about flashcards or fact sheets, but both of them just had the hardest time, and they would cry, and it's like 25 questions, and to me, I'm like, this is not that big of a deal. But kind of doing it in a more fun way. I know in Cindy's book, I think it was, or maybe something else that I read of hers, I thought it was her idea, but she just does like a ball toss with one of her kids. Like, she'll call out a question, and then, when he gets the answer, she gives him the ball, and vice versa. Another fun idea that we've done is, the card game War. We'll play the card game War, and they'll have to, when we lay both of our cards down side by side, they'll have to tell me the answer before we can, go on to the next hand. So just little things like that. I think just making it less torturous. Sometimes it's just hard for them to, do all those questions. It just looks like so much to their little brains, I think, to look at these 100 questions on the page or whatever it is. So to us, it has really, really, really changed our math regime this year, and I'm really excited about that. And we're only a month into school, but they are excited for it, and that makes me excited that they're excited about math. So even though I don't think they
Alicia, you make a really, really great point about war and games. We actually, I got into that last year, playing a lot more games with the kids that include math. That's a really great way to include math and not have it be so tedious. We also like to use I forget what they're called now, but they're just big puffy cloth dice that you can slide pieces of paper into and roll them around, and we'll do variations with different numbers or addition and subtraction signs, whatever it happens to be. And especially when the kids are younger, they love to roll the big dice. Although I'm sure you could use regular dice too, and there's plenty of games to be had with regular dice. I see Cindy shaking her head there. That yes, regular dice. There's lots to be had there. I do believe we had a question, Marlene, if you want to pull that up for us.
We do, and it's from Diana Kennedy. Diana wants to know what Cindy West's favorite resources for teaching adding, subtraction with place value and borrowing, because it's sending her second and third grader into a tizzy.
I believe that Brenda wanted to give this one a try as well and put her 2 cents in. So I think we're going to let Brenda start, and then Cindy can add in her thoughts as well.
Well, I'm certainly no Cindy West, but we are doing that right now. We just finished it. Actually, I feel like we just started third grade and she finally mastered it. I feel like the thing that's helped us the most with borrowing is just like seeing it there. So we'll use like a lot of manipulatives for that, like placing, like say it's like what, 12 my well, no, that wouldn't work. 24. Then you have, like, we'll say 20 manipulatives for the 20s place, like a group of 20 and then like a group of 3, and then say, well, can you subtract you can't subtract 7 from 3 because there's only 3 there, so we have to borrow some from our 10 section and move it over so that we can then have enough to subtract the bigger number. So that's probably the easiest way that we found of explaining it.
All right, Cindy, I guess that's your cue.
Okay, I would say that's exactly what I would do as well. There's something called base 10 blocks, which are really great for showing. Base 10 blocks are little tiny pieces that represent ones, sticks that represent tens, and blocks that represent 100. And then there's even cubes that represent 1,000. You wouldn't have to purchase those, though. You could make pennies represent ones. You could make pencils represent tens. And if you're just beginning to teach place value with, what I think the question was adding and subtracting with borrowing and carrying. Was that right? Okay, good. So yeah, you're basically gonna build out that problem with those manipulatives, just like Brenda said. There are even, if you'll check into Pinterest, there are even some little templates that kids can actually put those on and start seeing the columns for the ones, tens, and hundreds. I would just, I don't know if I would type into Pinterest or in Google, base 10 carrying charts or something like that, or base 10 borrowing charts, and you'll find little things that you can print that are really helpful, and maybe even some manipulatives that you can cut out, some base 10 blocks that you could cut out of paper. So if I didn't answer your question, Diana, just keep asking. Make us answer it right.
Me and my mute, apparently. I believe we have some more questions, correct, Marlene? Yep.
Yeah, we do. We have one here from Kyle. She's asking, she says actually she'd love to know of some resources to use with her older students to reinforce and introduce math concepts to them. They don't do formal school on Friday, so I think those would be great days for the kids to do some living math books or games.
Do you want me to go? Okay. If anybody else has ideas, pop right in there. It's no big deal. Hi, Kyle. I would say that for older kids, and I'm not exactly sure how old yours are, I forgot now, but I think logic is huge. And when I say logic, I don't mean that formal logic that you are aware of because of your classical homeschooling. I mean more of the logic matrix puzzles, analogies, if-then statements, truth statements. Those are not only super awesome for older kids, they really help prepare children to think about problems as they get older, because we all have problem solving to do. As far as other resources for older children, I've forgotten. My resource shelf is upstairs, and right now my senior's done pretty much with school. She's doing some CLEP things. My high schooler is pretty much just doing logic additionally with Algebra 1 with Saxon, and my little guy hasn't gotten to some of the older stuff yet. So I can look. I'm pretty sure if you go to my Living Math widget on my website, that I have a little resource section for older kids, and if I don't, I will work on that soon. Anybody else have ideas?
Unfortunately, like I said, I'm a textbook nut. I'm still working my way into living math, Cindy. That's the reason I'm here, because I can soak up all this wonderful information from you. Anybody, Alicia or Brenda, have any thoughts on older students?
Obviously, am I on? I can't tell. Obviously, my oldest is in 3rd grade, so I don't actually have teaching experience, but whenever we were in high school, probably the biggest logic, I mean, not necessarily logic, but like living math application that I did in high school, because I was homeschooled in high school, we did a budgeting course, which I think was really helpful. We learned things like balancing the checkbook and, just basic budgeting. And then we also did a little bit with Excel formulas, and that is extremely helpful for older kids because Excel is something you'll use in almost any business environment. So knowing those formulas, that kind of ties in the logic also, and sort of bridges the gap between logic and math. So that's something that would be really helpful for older kids, I think. But yeah, those are my 2 thoughts on the older kids. They helped me whenever I was in high school.
I do have one more thought. She made me think, and I don't know why this brought this up, but a photography course for older children is an awesome living math course. There is so much to learn with the thises, and I don't even know. I have
the f-stops. They're f-stops and apertures.
Yeah, I'm hoping one of my high schoolers will take a photography course and then teach me. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. Photography is kind of a hobby slash side thing for me, and there is actually a lot of math with f-stops and apertures and flash distances, like based on certain, how much the distance that your flash will reach, depending on the specs of the flash. So yes, I never even thought about that. Isn't that interesting? Yes, that there are a lot in when it comes to photography. You're right, there is a lot of other ideas. And I believe Alicia has some other ideas too, so I'd love to hear what she has to say.
Well, yeah. I just thought of something too with what Brenda was saying, and when I was in high school, I did not homeschool for high school, but we had a consumer math class, and I'm sure you could find something somewhere out there similar. And I remember like it just gave me so much real life. Um, it just was really kind of hit home with me because I was like, gosh, this math stuff really, you do use this, but you got a checkbook and or checkbook register, and then you just kind of had all these receipts and stuff that you had to fill in. And then I think at the end of the semester, at the end of the quarter, whatever it was, you had to make sure your book balanced. You had to make sure that you had the right balance. So I'm not sure. My oldest is a seventh grader, so we're just kind of doing, like I said earlier, kind of like some basic stuff. But I think that's one thing on my list. Especially for the next probably 2 or 3 years for him to find some kind of consumer math, because I think that's really important because that's something that they're going to use every day.
I think that's a really great point, Alicia. Absolutely, because we all have to learn to balance our checking accounts, don't we? Um, if we want to have any money left in them, we certainly have to keep track of that. I think that's a fantastic point. I was also thinking. Construction, like architecture, construction, building. There's a lot of real life practical math to be had there, and also a lot of practical hands-on skills in general. If you're getting some wood, or you're building something that can be had. And I see here we are starting to wind down our time. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to really thank Cindy West for being here and sharing her living math ideas with us. I think I'm going to give her just one more minute if there's something she'd like to say before I close. No?
Well, I will real quick. I just want to encourage everybody that you can totally do it. Get ideas, get books, things to help you. Go to my website, and all that stuff is there. So if you feel like, well, what do I still don't really know what to do? Just go to that website. I promise you it's there. Just pick one or two things and go for it. Your kids will just be overjoyed. Alicia said her kids are like, oh, we don't have to do math today. Well, they totally are doing math, but they have no idea. Okay, so do it. Your kids are going to love it. And I cannot stress enough that not only are they going to love it, but it really steps beyond the textbook into things that the textbook leaves out. New, cool things that they need to know to be good problem solvers in this world.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. That's a fantastic point. And now, Cindy said her website. She was specifically referring to Our Journey Westward, and also Shining Dawn Books. And she referred earlier to a specific page that she has dedicated to living math, and you can find that at ourjourneywestward.com. And I think Marlene put that up. If not, she will certainly put that up so that everybody has direct access to that. That's ourjourneywestward.com, and like I said, she has a specific living math section there for you. So thank you, Cindy, for joining us and sharing your information with us. And everybody, feel free to check out her book, Loving Living Math. Like I said, it's only $6 right now. I'm using the code LOVEMATH until the 31st of the month. And everybody, you can join us again next week for another hangout. I believe it's art next week. So if you're trying to figure out how to teach art in your homeschool, then we're on it for next week. So ihomeschoolnetwork.com/hangouts. Please circle us on G+ and all these fabulous ladies that you see here tonight. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss a single episode of all these wonderful hangouts that we have going on. So thanks for joining us here tonight at our iHomeschool Network Hangout on Living Math with Cindy West. Have a good night.